First Anissian, then Tana Mongeau, and now this. Today, I get the news. Vegan Gaines's wife, often referred to as Jasmine Gaines. To me, she's the Lady Gaines. She's selling nude images of herself on OnlyFans. And they have hinted that they are taking steps towards video porn. Whether or not this is a good idea for you, for her, for anyone, is subjective. What we all need to move past is this deep-seated assumption that when you say something is subjective, that means there's no wrong answer, or that all possible answers are equally right. Do you know people? Do you know some people? Do you know anyone for whom it would be a really bad idea to join the military? I'm not saying joining the military is the wrong choice for everyone. Oh, no. I'm asking you to think about the people you know, people you know deeply. Do you know one guy where if he told you he was going to sign up and join the military, you think, for you, Tom, for you, that's a really bad idea. I'm not making a judgment about the military. I'm making a judgment about you. See? It's subjective, but that doesn't mean there's no wrong answer. Tom, joining the army is wrong for you. It's subjective. It's a judgment about who you are. I had a girlfriend a long time ago, and early on in the relationship, she was asking me questions kind of to gauge how conservative I am. Now, most of you in the audience don't think of me as conservative, but there are some things to an outsider seem strikingly, strangely conservative. Like, I absolutely refuse to drink alcohol. Zero. None. Why? Why would anyone refuse to drink alcohol? And, if you're not already vegan yourself, being around someone who doesn't just refuse to eat meat and drink milk, but someone who seriously makes an effort to avoid killing cockroaches, to catch a cockroach alive and put it outside, it's like, this seems a little conservative. So this girlfriend of mine came to me one day early on in the relationship, and I could see she thought about this in advance. She thought about the question she was going to ask. And she asked a question about if you had a daughter yourself one day, would you allow her sexually to have freedoms X, Y, and Z, freedoms that you seem to think women should have in a Western democracy? And these freedoms include sleeping around and taking photographs of yourself sleeping around. And my answer was, it depends on the girl. I said you could have two daughters for whom there are two totally different answers. Because this isn't something where there's one answer that's good for all humanity, that's good for all mankind, right? I could have two different sons, and I'd say, yeah, you know what, Steve, you're going to do okay in the military. If I have a son, I'm not going to name him Steve. This is purely hypothetical. But maybe I adopted a son and he was already named for. Okay, my adopted son, Steve. Steve, you'll do. Tom, this is a terrible idea. Stop trying to imitate your brother Steve. What works for Steve isn't going to work for you. You have to really know people. And ideally, you know yourself. People start filming pornography now in most Western countries at 18 years old. At 18 years old, it's hard to know yourself. It's hard to make the right decision. It's hard to live with the consequences. There's a case that went through the courts almost exactly 1 year ago today against a company called OnlyFans. And 22 young women sued this company saying that they were talked into filming pornography with false promises made, and they regretted it, and it ruined their lives. Their parents and coworkers saw these videos, so on and so forth. Most of those negative consequences are things that a mature person with self-knowledge could have foreseen when they decided to appear in a pornographic movie. Most of these things you could say, well, these people were immature, or you could, in effect, blame the victim. That is, in fact, an irrelevant argument in terms of the legal decision made by the judge. The judge just had to decide whether the contracts they signed were valid or invalid, and he decided the contracts were invalid. However, we're not debating whether or not the women were immature. Like, they themselves in this case are declaring that they're immature, and they later regretted it. We're not debating that. What we're debating is precisely in our own lives, how can we have the self-knowledge, or how can we know what's good for ourselves? How can we know what's good for our friend Tom or our friend Steve when making these decisions? That's really what we're talking about. And it's never going to come down to this kind of government guideline about what goes into a contract, and it's never going to be in the constitution of a country that declares the rights of man, that declares everyone has the right to join the army and everyone has the right to sell naked pictures of themselves on the internet, right? The fact that you can doesn't mean that you should. And the fact that it's subjective, the fact that it's about you and you and you and what's really good for you and who you are, that doesn't mean that there's no wrong answer.